Please do announce yourself as more of you are joining in, and enter your location and name in the chat box for everyone else to know you. Welcome to this learning session brought to you by the Coach Mastery Community of Practice of the ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. As you all know, we conduct these webinars once in a quarter, and we do have CCUs awarded for those who attend the session. I shall be posting you a link at the end of the webinar for you to claim your CCUs. I would like to introduce my hosting team before we get started. So we have, of course, myself, Gayatri Anand. I'm your host for today. I'm a coach, and I also lead the Coach Mastery COP for ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. With me in the hosting team today are Nandini. Nandini, thank you for raising your hand. I know we could spotlight, but there are too many people on the screen right now. So Nandini is an executive assistant, virtual assistant for ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. And we have Preeti, who is, Preeti, maybe you can just wave. Thank you. Preeti is a PCC coach and ambassador of the Coach Mastery Community of Practice. And she is going to be your person today for curating the question answers, and also keeping a tab on the chats and on any of the reactions you have if you raise your hand, etc. So on behalf of ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter, I welcome you all again. Just a few hygiene pointers before I introduce our speaker for today. Kindly keep yourselves off video and mute your mics through the webinar until we open up the house for interactions. This is to avoid any inadvertent disruption to the session. Thank you. During the session, if you have a burning question, please put it up in the chat box, and Preeti will curate them for the Q&A segment towards the end of the session. For those who wish to claim CCUs, as I mentioned earlier, we will post a link to a Google form in the chat box sometime before the end of the session. Please use that link to enter your full name as you wish it on the certificate and your correct mail ID. We also invite you to stay on after the session for about 15 minutes of networking and sharing after a quick feedback poll. Last but not the least, before we break out for the Q&A, we shall have a quick photo shoot, and I shall prompt you to turn your camera on for the same. And just one more pointer, as part of the experience that Emma is intending to create for today, you shall be part of a breakout room. Each one of you shall be automatically assigned to a breakout room. You will be working in pairs. After about maybe 15 or 20 minutes, which we shall decide as we go along, you will automatically be brought back into the main room. You may not be able to leave the breakout room without leaving the meeting itself. So even if you are done before your allocated time, hang in there in the breakout room, and you shall get back into the main room once the timer is completed. Okay. So I once again welcome you to this learning engagement brought to you by the COP Coach Mastery of ICF Mumbai Charter Chapter. As you all know, today's topic is narrative coaching. In the 60-minute introduction, of which I've already eaten 7, I'm going to give that to Emma. So in this introductory session today, coaches, all of you here will gain a solid understanding of the fundamental concepts and get hands-on experience with practical tools that you can apply immediately in your practice. Narrative coaching is a powerful approach that helps clients explore, understand, and reshape the stories they tell about themselves and their experiences. This allows them to rewrite their narratives in more empowering ways, leading them to achieve greater personal growth and transformation. This is very intriguing personally for me, given that we all talk about exploring the who and not the what or the story of the client. And therefore, I think it's very interesting to know how do we weave in the story along with exploring the narrative and the person, and rewriting the narrative in an empowering way. The learning goals for today are: understand the key concepts, key principles of narrative coaching, develop awareness of how personal narratives impact client lives, learn a practical tool for eliciting client stories and identifying themes, have an opportunity to practice a narrative technique to reframe and reshape client stories for better outcomes. All right. The facilitator today, Emma Noguchi. She's an executive coach and managing director and co-founder of Coaching Go Where Private Limited, based out of Singapore. She's a narrative coach and integrated development practitioner, the Moment Institute. She's also a master certified coach, MCC from ICF, and she's a master of law from Paris University with a major in European law. She's accredited user of REISS Motivation Profile, Insights Discovery Profile, and Conversational Intelligence Tool. Emma Noguchi is passionate about unleashing potential in leaders so they can bring their teams to the next level of performance, engagement, and well-being. She started her career in India, then moved to Japan, and is now a resident in Singapore. After a short career as a lawyer and working in advertising, she became a coach and a management consultant to focus on people and culture in organizations. With her deep intuition and her abilities to sense what is not said, Emma works with C-suite clients to unearth unhelpful stories and start creating new, more empowering identities. She also works with teams to foster psychological safety and higher level of trust. She's known to be very versatile, very caring, and committed to supporting her clients to get to the truth of what really matters for them. Her current venture is a coaching institute to train and certify professional managers in coaching skills. When not working, Emma loves traveling, hiking, and playing in the metaverse virtual reality. She wants to bring the magic of coaching there too. Wish you all the very best, Emma. Look forward to seeing how that happens.
Oh,
And a fun fact before I hand it over to Emma, she started improv a year ago and loved the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, which I'm a fan of myself. Improvisation allows her to think on her feet and be very playful no matter what. Whoa. Thank you, Emma, for accepting to be here and to do this masterclass and share your wisdom with the community of coaches. Without much ado, I hand it over to you and I'll give you the extra 11 minutes that I have committed to you. Please take over. Thank you. May I request all of you to please go off video and off audio so that we could have Emma get into her flow. Thank you.
well, first of all, thank you, Gayatri, for this very nice introduction. And let me share my screen now. Really pleased to see almost 100 participants tonight, at least my two nights since I'm based in Singapore. So very briefly, I came across narrative coaching about roughly 10 years ago. And immediately when I heard Dr. David Drake speak about it at a coaching conference, I was immediately drawn to this approach. It was very powerful, and I really had a felt sense that it was quite different from what I've learned so far.
Emma,
Yeah.
sorry to intervene. Can you step up your audio, please?
Yeah, sure. I can't be heard well?
Yes.
Okay, let me put my mic more in front of me. How about now?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So to put it really simply, narrative coaching means coaching with stories or with storytelling. And we know that storytelling is the most natural and ancient form of human connection and connection. Stories were the medium by which we found our place in history, in our community. Stories was passed down from generation. And they help build a sense of meaning and evolve our identity. And even today, stories are really powerful. And so narrative coaching was created to offer a more natural and powerful way to coach using the client's stories. And really for me, it was a change in paradigm. For example, narrative coaches often start in silence, and they only speak when necessary, because very often silence in itself is very powerful. It's very generative. They also listen deeply before they jump in and ask a next question. And they trust that the story will reveal itself rather than the coach needing to find it. So there's a lot of emergence and trusting that the silence will generate insight and the fertile ground for the story to emerge, so to speak. So in today's session, I aim at equipping you with a good understanding of what narrative coaching is. I'm going to share the core principles, some of them at least, and one of the core model of narrative coaching as created by Dr. David Drake. And I will make sure that you have a chance to practice it in breakout. And I really would love to invite you to go into breakout, practice with a peer, and really get to experience it, because experience is way more powerful than me giving you explanation from a theoretical level, right? You really have to experience it to appreciate it. So with that, I'd love to quickly for you to check in. I know you've done a few in the chat already, where you come from, etc. But I'm curious, this lovely person welcome us to a nice hotel when we check in. If you could just put in chat, how are you arriving in this common and collective space? For example, you could be curious, calm, and open-minded, or ready to learn and be challenged in my thinking, or excited about how you might want to bring narrative coaching to your existing clients. So if you could just, put a few lines in the chat box and answer the question, how are you arriving in this common space? So just take a few moments to do that.
Are you able to read? Do you want me to read them aloud?
Yeah, I would love for you to just select a few and bring, to share verbally. That'd be lovely.
Excited, inquisitive, interested, keen, open and excited. Storytelling is very useful to open, curious. So I'm seeing a lot of curiosity to know the subject, enthusiastic and curious. Again, excited, curious, reflective, keen to learn, intrigued.
Okay.
I'm going to be challenged on my beliefs.
Wonderful.
Curious, quiet. Yeah. The sense I'm getting is that everyone is very curious about what is coaching on storytelling.
Wonderful. Okay, that's a great state to be in, curiosity. So let me start it with some of the core principles of narrative coaching. So those core principles really underpin this approach. They seem simple and obvious, but not necessarily easy to apply or practice. And they are also intertwined with one another, right? They complement each other. So the first one is be fully present to what is without judgment. So here the keyword is, there's a few, fully present, being present, mind, heart, body, being here and in the now. And also to what is coming, what is being, in the space with us at the present moment. So it's really about accepting fully what the client is presenting and how they are presenting it. It's the idea that they really own their story and how they want to deliver it. So for example, if the client shares a story or an issue that's on their mind, and the coach tries to clarify or interpret it, and in doing so kind of deliver it in a way that is not exactly the client's words or the client's mode of delivery, then it's kind of altering the way it is being told. So as much as possible, it's really to let the storyteller or the author of the story present it and deliver it the way they do. And just really noticing and being present, holding back any judgment or labeling whether it's, oh, it's a good story, it's a bad story, or, positive, negative, or, oh, this is a simple thing. Why is he or she bringing this today, or, etc., which often we do unconsciously. So a story is a story, and they're all equally important and worth witnessing and honoring for what they are. So that's the first principle. The second is the deep trust that everything you need is right in front of you. And this is also a cornerstone principle of narrative coaching. It emphasizes the fact that you don't need to go into your head looking for a tool, a model, a framework, or an astute questions, that you've learned during your coach training or you've read somewhere. And you don't need to make any interpretation or meaning making, or even problem solve or fix. We all tend to sometimes, have the impulse of doing. What you need is already in front of you. In narrative coaching, we call it the field. The field is the space that we're in with the client and their story. So what is in front of you? Your client, their story, and the field. So this is a principle that invites you to relax, to sit back, relax, and stay fully present. You don't need to go into your heads or to go into your thoughts. And really activate paying attention, noticing, also at a sensory level, right? Rather than thinking, which we also tend to do a lot. So the third principle is speak only when you can improve on silence. This third principle was inspired from Mahatma Gandhi. I'm not sure he's the only one who said that, but he said, speak only if it improves upon the silence. So this is a deep invitation to use silence as generative, to see silence as a ground from which can emerge new idea, new thoughts, new stories. And very often, consciously or not, we are quite uncomfortable with it. So we tend to feel it with sounds or words, or we get in our own thoughts that can be quite loud, actually, at least for us, where actually silence is often very, very generative. The more pauses and silent moment there are in a coaching session or conversation, the deeper the client allows himself or herself to go. So I invite here to be really generous in giving silence full space or more space. The fourth principle is interesting. So it's really focusing on generating experiences, not explanation. This is the idea that the session is really an opportunity for the client to experience, to have an experience or an experiment of something new. And it invites other channels than just thinking or the mental ideation or explanation process, which is often very analytical, very mental, which they rely, we all rely on most of the time. Instead, as a coach, we should invite the client to experience their sensation, their emotions, their felt sense, and invite them to notice rather than to explain. For example, you can help a client share that, I'm noticing tension in my chest and my heart beats faster. I'm feeling some anxiety. Instead of, the work issue really stresses me out because I can't afford to lose my job. I have a family of 6, etc. Right? This is an explanation of an emotion that is felt, but then it's rationalized or is justified by an explanation, versus really dropping into sensation, emotion, felt sense, because then they start experimenting themselves in new ways. And also the client will remember how they felt or how you make them feel during that session rather than what they said. Right? Our body remember, we we have usually sometimes a visceral sense of how we felt. So you can think of the coaching session as a place for them to experience those or activate those channels rather than just the head. That's really, really powerful. So focus on experience. And the experience is also neutral and not processed with a layer of judgment, good, bad, or I don't experience anything, am I doing it right, or etc. No, there is no such thing. Okay. So here, just the 4 principles. Be fully present to what is without judgment. Trust that everything you need is right in front of you. Speak only when you can improve on silence. And focus on generating experiences, not explanations. Again, those principles seem obvious. They are, I mean, if you are an experienced coach, they probably already resonate in you. But they're not necessarily easy to apply or to practice. And so with that in mind, I would like you to just take a few moments absorbing what I've just shared in the last few minutes. Who are you as a narrative coach? Or if you were to be a narrative coach and embody those principles, what is that evoking in you? And I really want to emphasize that being a narrative coach is actually really being rather than doing coaching or doing an intervention. Right? So for example, one thing that I've emphasized is to be fully present. But what does this really mean? So I'd love to hear, maybe from the chat, if you can put in the chat some of what is evoked in you at this point.
So witness is the first one that I caught here, and then deep trust that everything you need is in front of you. I'm evoked by a deep sense of resonance as I listen to the 4 principles. Here and now, a loving presence, curious.
Nice.
Speak only if it improves on silence. So I'm wondering if I should be speaking now. Deep introspection within me, curious. Okay. And that's a very powerful statement. Speak only if it improves the silence. Space, honoring, full attention. Let the coaches unpack while I remain non-judgmental. Listening deeply and having a sense of calm. Creating an emotional bonding without saying a word. Wow. Being in the flow together with the client, holding silence is an action. You. Being with the client at each moment. Who initiates the narrative story, coach or coachee? So here's a question we have as to who initiates the narrative story. Focus on experiences, not on explanation. In service of what the client needs, be here and now, listening to the unsaid. How you make the client feel is more important than what you say to the client. Evokes Sahaja in me. I hope I got that right.
I love your comments. It's beautiful. I'm glad that it's kind of touching you in some ways. And I just want to also bring this metaphor of the bench, the park bench, which is also something that David brings in his teaching or in his narrative coaching sessions. The idea that you are in this beautiful park with potentially those leaves, and sitting with the clients by the side rather than in front of them, and kind of looking at what's in front of them, the story, what's going on for them. So there's this idea that you walk alongside the client, and you sit on a bench to kind of hear their story. Any more, Gayatri, or shall we move on?
A free expression, be a witness to being behind the narrative. Silence brings in inner peace. Listen attentively with no words to make the present felt by the client.
Yeah.
Present and holding the space. Yeah, beautiful.
So I wanted to, maybe it's here at this point, I'd like to share that I came across narrative coaching about 5 years ago, and I had already been on my fourth or fifth years of coaching. I've done a lot of training before that. And I recall that this whole entire training of working with David and his team and really applying that to my work was as much a learning that it was an unlearning for me. I had to kind of unlearn the, being fixated on a goal, for example, or being in a control of the session somewhat, right? We kind of all want to bring value, especially when we work in executive coaching with a lot of companies, often with stakeholders right? That's, but yeah, it was a lot of unlearning to really just be there in the space, but not actually doing much. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot that is happening, right? But yeah, it's just really fostering that space. So if that's okay, I'm going to move on to now introducing the core narrative coaching model. For those who are interested, I mean, I think we can share the slides at the end, not a problem. It's also in David's book, Narrative Coaching, which is widely available. So it's called the 4S model because it has 4 quadrants, and each phase that starts with an S. And it starts from left to right. So left, top left, situate. We always start in situate. And situate is really about, where are we, what's going on, what is. Then the second phase is search, right? And you see T1 is, without going too much in details, is the first threshold number 1 from situate to search. What if, right? And it's really helping the client to search deeper, especially in their inner world, whereas situate is often a topic that comes from their outer world. So situate, then search, then we move to shift, crossing the second threshold. And often shift, as the name suggests, there is somewhat a shift in the client's consciousness. They've realized something in their inner world, in their inner story, that now they are able to shed a new light on. And then finally they finish, you help bring them back to sustain, which is in the outer world again. So situate, search, shift, and sustain. And it's always in that order. Another way to show it is, sorry, this is exactly what I was explaining with now the arrow. Another way to explain it is situate is the old story, or the what the client gets stuck with, whatever they bring. And then as you move into the inner world in search, you kind of help them experience the in-between story, so to speak. Oh, actually that story is not that solid, or is not that true, or it's kind of made up, it's my own, or they kind of see they go into the in-between space. And then you help them experiment with an in-between story, a better story, or something that works best for them, or better for them. Especially when they find out what matters, which is the key questions there. I mean, when you see this question, it doesn't mean that those are necessarily questions to be asked in this phase. It's just a representation of what that phase is about. And then you finish with sustain phase, the new story, right? Which is more sustainable, they bring back in their world, and they can now start applying or take action from. Another way to put it, I was hesitant to share the slides. I don't want to overcomplicate things, but situate could be the explanation of the self, right? If you look at the client as the current self, or it would be from the past or, conscious. There's something that's not working. It's started 2 weeks ago or a year ago or whatnot. And then you go into search. And from past conscious, you move to past unconscious in the inner world. An experience of help the client experience possible selves. And then you move to shift, where it's more movement towards future. What if, right? What could potentially work based on what matters to me, right? So past to future, still unconscious because it's the inner world of the client, and start experimenting with what new self could be or new story could be about. And then sustain, expression of new self. Okay, back in the world, back in my work or office, how would that look like if I really embody the new me or this new story? Okay. So again, this is just an introduction. So I tried to make it really quite simple, but not too simplistic. These are the 4 phases and 4 potential questions that you can ask in order to uncover what's really important through this 4 phase. So situate, for example, is what are you noticing right now? And you see how the question is phrased. It's not what are you thinking or what's going on, which they're likely to launch into a long explanation. It's not a bad question necessarily, but what are you noticing right now? It's really already inviting the client to notice rather than to explain. And they might say, I feel heavy. I'm noticing I'm tired, right? Then the second questions in search, what feels important about that, right? This is incredibly powerful questions, because now they have to think about what's really important or meaningful about that for me, right? You're really inquiring in the who. And then shift, what are you feeling called to do? An invitation to look forward, to look into the future. This is inviting them to look at their aspiration, their purpose, perhaps, or their values. And then finally, in sustain, what is different as a result? Which kind of bring them back into the 3-dimensional world, or the present, and what can they do about it, and maybe take an action or a step. So I just want to take you through now to a recent example of a client I coached. And I am just explaining through the example on the right. What she said, of course, it's paraphrased, and what was really where she was at in each phase. So situate started, I'm noticing how stressful I feel to have to cook for my husband and daughter every day. And she has a career, so I have to cook and I'm busy at work. And then we went to explore in search what's, her inner world. As a working professional, I need to also be a devoted wife and mother. I must cook daily to provide healthy meals to my husband and daughter. It was actually her story, and it kind of, or her belief, right? And it really kept her entrenched into that, I need to cook for them, and it's part of my duty as a mother. And then in shift, she actually realized, I actually don't like cooking at all. And I'm realizing these expectations are only mine. My husband and daughter actually enjoy cooking, and they don't mind preparing food themselves. And then when we finished in sustain, she arrived at a place where she's confident she can focus on her career and what makes her happy. It's other hobbies like gardening or walks. And not cooking doesn't mean that she cannot be a loving wife and mother, right? Because she had associated those two for some reason. So, and this was just 10-15 minutes session where we went through this 4 phase. I know there were some questions. I think, how long does it, and do we need to take to use narrative coaching? You can do it in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an entire coaching session that lasts 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Or you can also work towards, going through the model over a few weeks. For example, sometimes clients need to unfold the situate, and that could take half a session or full session. Doesn't mean that you have to go through the 4 in one session. Again, see what serves your clients best based on what they need. So what I would like to do next is to actually invite you to really practice and really play with the core principles. We're going to put you with a partner in a breakout, and you're just going to stick to the 4 questions to make it easy.
Yeah, so I have...
Sorry, Gayatri, how are we doing in terms of timing?
Yeah, so we'll keep it for 14 minutes, Emma. I've
Okay.
just put up the format for the breakout room in the chat, which is basically, I'll read that out. So you work in pairs, you rotate the pair. The first time, member 1 is coach, the other member is client, and up to 5 minutes for each member in that role, which means up to 5 minutes you coach and 2 minutes of debrief. So every member gets 7 minutes. Then you reverse the roles, and the other member gets another 7 minutes, 5 minutes of coaching and 2 minutes of debrief. Client will share something that you would like to work on and something that's bothering you. Share the essence of it, omit the details if you can, and be concise to the coach so that the coach can practice the 4 questions. The coach will only use the 4 questions. However, you can reflect, make observations, etc., but stick to the 1 question for each phase, which means you will play this game by only asking these 4 questions. And then we'll have a debrief between the client and the coach. What was the client's experience? What was the coach's experience? And how did they notice the 4 phases of the narrative coaching? So we'll have 14 minutes of breakout room in all. And I've just put in the instructions in there. So
yeah.
Before that, Ruxana had raised her hand. Maybe she has some query if we can attend to that. Ruxana,
Sure.
can you please speak up? Yeah. Ruxana, are you there? Okay, I think we can continue.
I was wondering, Gayatri, shall I just quickly share the instruction before we send people to? Yeah, so it's in the chat already, so you feel free to download that. But just to quickly share, so we'll give you, so you'll be with a pair, in a pair. You have up to 5 minutes of coaching, right? And then 2 minutes of debrief. So client shares something that you'd like to work on. Please don't go too much into details because you want your partner, the coach, to practice the 4 question. Ideally go through the 4 quadrant. And then if for the 2 minutes debrief, client, you can share your experience, but try to avoid going into explanation, but rather share your experience, how you felt, and and then also the coach, how was it to coach this way? Okay. We'll give you a total of 14 minutes. And then when it's time to switch and swap partner, we'll put a broadcast so that it's time to switch. Okay, let me prepare the breakouts.
I think I already have done that. So okay, you take control. There's something that
let me just unshare. Sorry.
I think we could just start the rooms.
Sorry, how many breakouts are there?
I have created about 42 rooms so far.
Oh, okay. So you've prepared the breakouts, is it?
I have. I've already done
Okay. Sorry, I don't have to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to just open the rooms. So guys, as I mentioned, you will not be able to jump back into the main room until the 14 minutes have gone by. So hang in the room. Otherwise, you have to leave the meeting. All right. All the best doing your narrative coaching. I open the rooms now.
So as folks are coming back, I just want to flash this beautiful picture and invite you to start pondering, what is your biggest takeaway from either this session or the practice, especially a takeaway that you really would like to bring into your coaching practice or to your clients. So just think of that, and please
So,
share it
yeah,
in chat.
while you just keep putting in your takeaways in the chat box, may I also invite you all to put on your videos so we could have a quick group photo of the session today. Thank you. That's lovely.
Wow, lovely to see you all.
Yeah. Let me just quickly do this. Hold on a minute. Please keep the chats trickling in with what your takeaways were. How was your experience with the breakout rooms? While I just go ahead and
Nice to see all of you.
send some more.
So pleased to see some friends as well joining today. Thank you for spending time with us.
While the photo is being taken, do you want me to read out?
Yes, please, go
The
ahead.
questions helped reflection, a truly powerful format. It was a brilliant session, enjoyable, interesting. Time was short. I partnered with Kirti and it was very powerful. Good flow of questions, fascinating that it yielded insight and clarity in such a short time. Focus was immediately on the person rather than the issue. Powerful questions, felt at ease and unburdened. My partner could not participate due to audio issue. I'm sorry, Kenneth, for this. Need to practice this more. 4 power questions, and yes, it works. The questions focus more on feeling, which help the client to share their feelings rather than thoughts. Sticking to 4 questions can make me a good listener. Questions help to dig deeper into subconscious, getting a different perspective, a shift experienced in short time. Great to reconnect with my friend. It was easy and relaxing session. Between good questions and emphasis on active listening, this is a great format. Powerful framework. I was amazed at the way the 4 questions stop you from losing focus and wavering. I became aware of my own mind chatter. Great. I felt that actually listening to the narrative and being curious while asking the questions helped create a shift and added meaning to the questions as listed. The 4 questions did free the coach and coachee to just be in the moment. It did feel a little rehearsed in the beginning. We'll need more practice. Loved the session, but wanted to know where the best resources on this topic would be found. Loved the bite-sized coaching. Interesting to work within the boundary of 4 questions. Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm so pleased to read all your comments. If you are interested in narrative coaching and unpacking the model, the principles, and many other things, you can get it in the book, Narrative Coaching. I'm showing it to you. It's available widely. It's simply titled Narrative Coaching, The Definite Guide to Bringing New Stories to Life by David Drake. David has also a website called the Moment Institute. I'm just going to share it in the chat. And you can also find some information about narrative coach certification and etc. So you can inquire directly there. Here it is. Let me see everyone in the meeting. Here we go. Is there any questions that I can take on or?
Yeah, I think there were 2 questions which had popped up earlier. I assume they've been answered by now. The first one was, who initiates the narrative of the story, coach or the coachee? So anybody who wants to answer that, having experienced the breakout.
Let's test your knowledge. Yeah. So this is a great questions. I want to remind you, and I'm not sure if I shared it really explicitly earlier, but if you're trained with ICF modality, we often start with goal. What is that you want to work on, right? It's part of the contracting. With narrative coaching, what's a little bit counterintuitive, you start with what is. So what's on your mind? What are you bringing today? And really spend a lot of time exploring what is without judgment, inviting the client to notice, etc. So it's not so much focusing on the goal as much as what's going on in situate.
Hmm.
So there's one more question come up.
Yeah.
Sustain is something I would like to understand more, especially the question, what is different as a result? Maybe with an example.
Yes. So yeah, thank you, Sudha. So really, we all know that for a coaching session to be different from just a conversation or chit chat, it has to bring tangible results, result in the actual world that are measurable, that are observable, right? So it's really important to bring back the clients in the outer world and translate the new learning or the new story into action, into next step. And make it sustainable. That's why this phase is called sustain. So in the case of this client that I who was realized that she didn't like cooking, she had a conversation with her spouse and her daughter and said, and really admitted that she felt really burdened to cook every day. And then they had a really candid conversation, and she was relieved from the burden of having to cook. Right. So a number of actions then derived from that realization and conversation. Is that helpful, Sudha?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Emma. Thank you so much. I think,
Yeah.
what I was wondering is, what are we trying to find out with this question? What is different as a result? Like when we ask this question to the client,
Yes.
what are we wanting to hear?
Yeah. Again, practical, tangible action, next step. What is it going to look like now on? So in my client's examples, with that new realization, what are you going to do next? Okay, I'm going to have a conversation with my husband tonight, with my daughter, tell them about my relationship to cooking and my belief that I have to be cooking every night to be a good wife. So that was a clear action step.
Okay. Thanks, Emma. Thank you so much.
I just want to, before I forget, because I know time is running out and some people might need to have to jump off soon. I just want to share a last visual with a quote that I find really pertinent to today's presentation, to narrative coaching. Let me share it with you now. Here we go. So it's a quote by Daniel Stern. One should let the flow accomplish its work and find its own immediate destiny. And I really love this quote, and I love the picture, because for me, it really encapsulates what the essence of narrative coaching is about. There is already, a flow, or an impulse or a movement in the client. And often it's just about helping the new story to emerge, so to speak, instead of trying to intervene or trying to make things happen. Right? Let the flow of the story, or let the flow of life accomplish its own immediate destiny. And maybe be more of a witness, be more of a guardian, if that makes sense. I just wanted to share that and leave that inspiring quote with you.
That's very powerful, Emma, because very often we jump into saying, rather than allowing it to emerge for the client, because it's their story and they need to own the newer narrative that's come up for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's another question over here by Rajesh. How does the shift happen from what if to what matters to what's the path to that?
Yep. So yeah, this is really I would say, a kind of a place in the session where there is a turning point. There is a point in the session where the client starts realizing, something new. They gain a new awareness about themselves, or about their story, or about their situation, and there's a shift. And it's not necessarily a one aha moment. Clearly, it can be more of progressive steps, throughout. So it's not necessarily a clear turning point, but there's definitely a shift towards, from past to future, where they start really looking at, more forward looking rather than in the past. So it's, again, I mean, the model is very theoretical. Obviously, it doesn't happen so crystal clear in real life. Coaching sessions are often very exploratory, very messy, right? It's not, you can't apply the model like that strictly, but it's really sensing when there is a clear shift. And this is part of your intuition, part of your felt sense, and also just asking the client, it sounds like something just happened right now. What is it for you? Or I notice a shift in your face, or your face, brightened up. Oh, and then often it's, something came up, or I realized something, is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so Preeti, there was one more question, I think, which came up before we went into the breakout room, which let me just read.
There was one, who initiates the narrative, coach
No,
or the
that
coach?
we covered. There was another which is, isn't brain summarizing?
Is it brain summarizes and create meaning of what is said by the coachee, invariably as a judgment?
And I think that is where, if I could answer that, I mean, the way I relate to that is that, we are not making sense of the client's story. And that's where our judgment doesn't come in. Obviously, the client might have their own beliefs or judgments about themselves or about the world. And that's what kind of comes out when the story comes out. And you as a coach, you're just noticing it for the client. You're just asking them these questions, which makes them aware of what is their own narrative around, or their own limiting belief, or their own values or ideas, which is bringing the story out or making the story important for them. And then look at, what are the possibilities there. So obviously both the brains are there, but I think our brain is only from a standpoint of being present to listen without judgment and not wanting to make sense of the client's story.
Yeah. I just saw Jeff and Preet's questions, which are related. Obviously, yes, the 4 questions, this is very, I mean, it's just to give you a taster. Obviously, there's many more questions you could ask in each phase.
Yeah. And you can keep going the question and answers. I'm going to just put up very quickly the feedback poll so that we don't miss out on that before we call the time for the session today. So please do go ahead with your Q&A while you also respond to the poll. Thank you.
There's a question over here. If we have, 1 second.
Yeah.
If we have the banks to allow the river flow, that's fine. But with some clients, they like to share and are all over the place. How do we divert to the real issues and direction of flow?
Thank you, Wilson. Yes. So I guess it really depends. Sometimes a story is narrated in a way with a lot of details, a lot of texture, and it's important for the client that they tell their story the way they want, or then, so it's for you to judge, either to really give full space and give full attention to that. But sometimes they go into so many details, they get confused themselves, or they just tend to rant. So again, you have to kind of see and slowly come. I mean, just make them aware. You're sharing a lot. It sounds like either it's what's really going on here, or could you summarize, just so that I'm really clear what's happening or what's underlying your story. So that could really help them to, zoom in or zero in into the core. Or sometimes they're just unpacking, and it's maybe emotions are being expressed. That's where the best possible action is just be with them and witness what's happening as they unpack. So I would say, Wilson, it really depends.
Yeah, and also I think if you can just watch the energy of the client as to, and sometimes it happens that it could also be a strategy to have a deflecting story to not get into the real issue. And so if you can just sense where the energy is going and what is not being said, which is something intuitively you will know that there's something which is not out in the open, and you could invite the client to intuit with you as to what's really the issue here. Sorry, Emma, I'm pitching in between.
No. Thank you, Gayatri. It's very, very helpful.
All right.
There aren't any more questions. Wonderful framework. Thank you.
I'm just wondering if folks, just to ask you, so with the 4 principles I've shared and this model, you have hopefully a taster with those these key questions. What would you like to implement maybe tomorrow or next time with a client? And just put it in chat. And it could be as simple as, oh, I'm gonna use silence much more in my session and see what happens. Or
Okay, I'm just fervently typing to answer the question. The submit button will be available to you when you have responded to all the questions which do need an answer. The optional questions you could skip, but the questions which do need an answer need to be responded before the submit button comes up. Emma, to answer your question, and I'm taking the privilege of doing an audio answer rather than a chat answer, is that I think I would perhaps ask, what are you noticing? As a question to kind of get them into the center. And I think there was also a question earlier in the registration as to how do you do that balancing between externalization and internalization, which was very clear in the sustain and the situate phases were externalized, and the other two, the search and I forget the third one, but those are really the internal ones. So yeah, I think the one question I would want to play around with my clients would be, what are you noticing?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and I see some great comment in the chat. Yeah, please go and experiment. Yeah, what are you noticing? Generating experience, silence. Not start with the goal questions. Yes, Nikki, good. All right.
Very good. We still have a few more people who need to respond to the poll. So I invite you all to please do so. Before I could click the end poll button, we have 60 out of the 74 who have responded. So I'll give you another couple of minutes. Very quick one, just 6 questions. Won't take you more than perhaps a minute or two. Any other questions, Preeti, from the earlier registration, which might be pertinent to take up now?
So there were some questions around, how can one be certified in narrative coaching? And can this be applied to group coaching as well? Can this model?
Yeah, great questions. Absolutely. You can take a group or team through the 4 quadrants and help them shift to a better story, a better narrative, depending on what the needs is. Yeah. You can also use, I saw some comment about also using it for self. Yeah, self questions.
Yeah. Right. And there was another question, how do you unearth the need of a new narrative?
Well, so coaching starts with something that is bothering the client. Otherwise, they wouldn't come for a coaching session, isn't it? There is something they struggle with. They need some sort of change. And so you start by asking, okay, what's going on? Where are they? How are they situating themselves, or right? What is currently for them? And then slowly you kind of help the new story to emerge, because they're currently maybe stuck with a present story that's not helpful, or they feel constrained with. It's almost that you use the session to give birth to a new story that maybe they're afraid to tell themselves, or they haven't accessed yet. It depends, but yeah. Helpful? Yeah, thank you, Nazarius. Yes, the silence. I'm really pleased to see great takeaways, folks, and really invite you to go and practice. At the end of the day, if you want to practice narrative coaching, yes, you can take on the certification and read the books, etc. But there are things that you can do straight away, today or tomorrow. So just experiment and notice, and oh wow, this was quite interesting. Let me practice that more. And the client doesn't need to know, right? You're coaching them. Is it narrative coaching? Is it something else? It's irrelevant for them, as long as it really helps them with clarity and whatever they need.
Just
Any
one
last
more
comment?
thing. I hope all of you have got the CCU link, which was put up on the chat board. So if not, I can do that one more time, I guess. Yep. All right.
There's another question. Maybe I missed that.
Yep.
What I'm understanding that this 4 questions can be repeated in sequence within the same session when new things emerge. Am I right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. They are, generally, very broad and generic. Again, don't try not to use it as like, okay, in a formulaic way and sequential way. Be present to the client and what is most helpful, rather than preparing the question in your head. But absolutely, those are great questions that could apply to many different contexts and topic. And I invite you to find out more from themomentinstitute.com. I know David sometimes does also taster session, complimentary. Join one of them and see if you want to explore certification.
All right. Any other questions, Preeti?
Not any. Yeah, all are finding it a very valuable session, interesting, impactful session, simple framework, kind of a laser coaching. In just 10-15 minutes, you're able to see the shift in the client, get deeper in their conversations. Wonderful.
Yeah, we will share the slides.
Yeah, we'll share the slides with all the participants who registered. So stand by for that. All right. Any other comments, questions, experience, how you experience the breakout room itself? I know a lot of feeds have come into the chat, but if somebody wants to express, we have another couple of minutes.
I just want to invite Gayatri, if that's okay, if someone feel the urge to share verbally in the space, maybe just, you can get off mute and share. We still have a few minutes. No?
Yeah, hey there. Yeah, I got a
Okay.
question.
I would like to share.
Who is it, Johnny or Manish?
Yeah.
Johnny.
Manish.
Yeah, thanks,
Oh,
Emma.
Manish, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll let them both go.
Say again?
Manish first and then Johnny. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so the original quote that you talked about, silence, and you talked about Mahatma Gandhi. Can you just expand a little bit about that, the quote itself, and kind of what's the intention around the meaning of that quote?
Yes, I'll do that in. Sorry, Johnny, do you want to ask your questions? I just want to see if I can. Perhaps no. Yeah. Okay, you're good. Yeah. Simply, it's the idea that more often than not, silence is very, very powerful. But because of the way we are conditioned, we are very uncomfortable with it. It's often often awkward. We feel the urge to come in, fill the silence with sounds or with words. Whereas often it allows deeper reflection to occur. So if we can just stay silent and invite, and naturally invite the space to feel,
Yeah, the quote
more
was something about
reflection.
like be silent until you can add value. What was the quote exactly?
Oh, sorry. Speak only when you can improve on silence. Yes.
Yeah, so just explain that a little bit. So speak only when you can improve on silence.
Yeah. So it's really the idea that silence is already very powerful.
Okay.
Only speak when you can improve. You can add more value than what silence is bringing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it.
Very often,
Thanks.
Manish, we tend to add words because maybe we are uncomfortable with silence. And those words again get into the loop of meaning making. And therefore, it might deflect what the client is actually experiencing in the moment. So add only when you really want to say something and not to fill up the gap.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good seeing you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
This was
just wanted to
engaging.
share a thought
Yeah.
with you, if
Yes,
you're
sir.
okay with that. It's just, I was actually not planning to attend the session, and it was blocking my calendar. And I
Yeah.
somehow reached Tushima, and she was in the busy thing. Thanks, Tushima, for helping me out. I found a way to remove this event from my calendar because I was not able to remove it. And then I saw a mail, and I read that mail. And I said, okay, I've just removed this space from the calendar, but I'm not going to fill it with something else. Maybe I will come in and attend. And I think that was one of the greatest thing that I've done today because it is such a wonderful. I was sharing it in the breakout room as well. It was such a wonderful. It is a laser sharp focused coaching, according to me. It's so precise, and there is no need for so much of verbal exchange in a coaching space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very pleased, Johnny. Thank you for sharing. Yes, often the most powerful coaching session I noticed in my own journey as a coach is often the session where I really spoke very little. So I have this joke sometimes with fellow coaches that actually when you do, coaching at a certain level, after a while, it's almost like you don't have to do much. You get a bit lazy in a way. And it doesn't mean that not much happened. Again, sorry, I'm kind of using humor here, but it's really the ability to be present and to be really focused and relaxed at the same time. Also to be very comfortable with the unknown, not getting anywhere, not trying to lead or to steer. It's just, I have no idea where this is going, but yeah, let's explore together. And that's a deep space where new things can emerge. But it's scary. It's scary because we are really in the dark. Metaphorically speaking, it's very uncomfortable. So it takes practice and full acceptance that I'm going to surrender. I trust that everything I need is right in front of me. I trust that the client already has their answers within them. It's going to emerge, right? So, but it takes practice and surrendering. Okay.
Do that. All right. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for
My pleasure.
being
You're
your
most
wisdom
welcome.
and really making people experience the power of that, as people put it, as a laser coaching. With just 4 questions, there's a lot that can be achieved. And speak only when you can improve on silence. So thank you for agreeing to do this. Thank you for coming in with a very powerful presentation, which I shall share with everyone. And thank you, folks who are still around. I know it's almost 2 minutes to the window assigned. And thank you for being here. Thank you for being so engaging. And thank you for your participation wholeheartedly in the breakout room and really experiencing the power of narrative coaching. And I welcome you all to connect with Emma or the ICF Mumbai chapter on LinkedIn. This posts are also available on LinkedIn as we complete the sessions. So thank you again. And I think it's time to wrap up and time to say bye. So look forward to our next session the next month or the month thereafter. We do a session every quarter. So looking forward to having you all again, and stay connected and stay healthy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You all.
Thank you, Emma.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.